All right, and everybody can see the slides. Could I get a thumbs up? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So just a quick high-level roadmap for today for folks who came on just a minute ago and didn't see the title slide. This is a balance of state continuum of care meet and greet. And so we'll be doing some introductions with balance of state staff, particularly folks who work for the Colorado Division of Housing, because the Colorado Division of Housing plays some key roles with the balance of state. And then we also have the governing board represented, so you'll be introduced to them. And then we'll also have the Division of Housing Community Partnerships team here, because they do work with all CoCs, including the balance of state. We'll talk real high level of the history of CoCs and the balance of state specifically. We'll talk about the governance structure, so particularly some key roles, and then what it means to be what's called the collaborative applicant and the HMIS lead. We'll hear from our community partnerships team at DOH, and then the bulk of our time today, like I mentioned earlier, we really want to have some great discussion with you all. So the bulk of our time today will be doing a live poll so we can understand some priorities from your perspective and have some discussion about that. And then we'll close with a couple of announcements of what is next. So I will pass it over to you, Kristen, to kick us off with introductions.
Thank you, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm driving from one community meeting to another one because we at Division of Housing and Office of Homeless Initiatives, we are here to support communities. That's what we're all about as we work to help our neighbors have housing. So glad to be with you all. My name is Kristen Toombs, she, her, hers. I'm the director of our Office of Homeless Initiatives. So the work that we now at the division, that's within the Division of Housing at the state. And so the work that we're doing to support the balance of state continuum of care is within the Division of Housing and the Office of Homeless Initiatives. And you'll hear more about this from the rest of the team, but I just want to say that we are beyond excited and honored to take on these important roles to support all of you doing this really incredible, hard, important work throughout our state. And so just want to say that we are here with the vision that what drives all of us every day. And the reason we're here at the state is truly to support you all in doing the hard work. And so thank you for being here today, but also thank you for what you do every day. And thank you in advance for partnering together as we all move forward to help more and more of our neighbors move into safe and stable housing. So thank you for being with us today, and I'll pass it over to Cassie.
Thanks, Kristen. Hi, folks. Cassie Westmoreland, she, her, hers. Kristen hit a lot of the high points, so I'll just introduce myself and my role with the balance of state. I've worked in a lot of different areas within the Office of Homeless Initiatives Division of Housing. For folks on the call who are familiar with ESG or Fort Lyon or some of our other non-voucher-based programs, you've probably seen my email before. But currently, I am working as a contractor with the Division of Housing to help build up the long-term infrastructure for balance of state. So have been working on YHGP with our youth partners. YHGP is Youth Homeless Demonstration Project, which the balance of state has as a grantee from HUD, and also really working to set the Division of Housing team up for success and to continue to support the great work that you all are doing, like Kristen mentioned. So I will pass it over to Chelsea.
Thanks, Cassie. And I just have to say, I'm loving seeing all of these things in the chat of what people do for self-care. And it is making me realize I need way more hobbies. So thank you all for sharing all of these. But I'm Chelsea Mandel, and I am in a similar role as Cassie. I'm in a contracting position where I'm working on some of the balance of state transition work. So prior to this role, I did work with the Office of Homeless Initiatives, first on our Emergency Solutions grants program, and then on a couple of voucher programs, including the Continuum of Care program, but then transitioned into this role where it has been so much fun to get to meet a lot more balance of state folks and work on the annual notice of funding opportunity, or NOFO, and then on a couple of other transition processes as Division of Housing has stepped into this new role. So excited to see you all and excited to have this conversation today. And I will kick it off with to Dee.
Hi, my name is Dee Clement, and I am the Executive Director for Loaves and Fishes Ministries. I also serve on the Balance of State Governing Board and have been doing that now for about almost 9 years, I believe. So excited that we're having this conversation. And I'm not sure who I'm kicking it to next. There, Matt, you're next.
Awesome. Thank you, Dee. My name is Matt Richard, he, him, his. I am the HMIS manager for the Balance of State. So I'll be your main point of contact for basically all things HMIS and our CoC. So it's hard for me to believe this, but I actually have close to 8 years of experience working in HMIS at this point, really in all levels of our system. Most recently, I was the data design and reporting lead at the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, where I served on the HMIS lead team there, providing technical support and leadership in the Metro Denver CoC. Prior to that, I worked for our HMIS software vendor, BitFocus, and I supported 17 communities across the country that use the same software that we use here in Colorado, Clarity Human Services, including Balance of State CoCs in these other states. So it was really helpful to understand how other communities are leveraging our software to track their information and improve outcomes for the folks being served. And before all of that, I was an HMIS end user at the Volunteers of America Colorado branch on their supportive services for veteran families team, or SSVF team. And I was tasked with doing data entry and supporting case managers with data collection needs across the statewide field offices that VOA has for SSVF. So I got to witness kind of firsthand the data collection challenges associated with HMIS, some of the duplicate data entry that folks are juggling, right? They have their own databases that they have to oversee in addition to HMIS. And I really, back in that day, we had a different system. HMIS was a place you went to do data entry for things you were required to do, and you never really got anything else out of it, right? It just seemed like busy work for folks more than care coordination. That role really, in many ways, motivated me to get more into data analysis and help frame the scaling characteristics of persons who are, being served by each provider in continuums in Colorado, highlighting in data-driven ways the inequities that we all know exist, right? And hopefully providing valuable data analysis resources and tools like dashboards, operational reports, to help frame the important work that all the providers in our state are contributing to. So I'm very excited to have joined the Division of Housing Balance of State team in this new leadership role for HMIS for our CoC and to support homeless service providers in the Balance of State. Really enjoy getting to connect with the folks we've connected with out of the gate in the first 2 months we've been in our positions. And I'm really looking forward to all the important work we're going to be able to accomplish together moving forward too. So I'll kick it over to my colleague, Carla.
Hi, everyone. Name is Carla Erks Nieves. Recently got married, so it used to be Colo Nieves. She, her, hers. I am on the HMIS team with Matt, and I work from my home in Colorado Springs. A little bit of background on how I got here. I used to work in the marketing and communications field, and one of those jobs was with the Clarity HMIS software vendor, BitFocus. And so my job there was just to research and write a bunch of articles and organize webinars and write some software tutorials just around HMIS, coordinated entry, by name lists, all of that. And so that was how I first got into the housing and homelessness space. And that's what led me to switch careers and go back to school for my master's in social work. During some of my internships, I briefly worked in direct services and got to experience being an HMIS end user. I think around the time in 2018 when the state was moving over to Clarity. So got to kind of see some of that transition. Quickly learned that direct services was not a great fit for my performance anxiety. So the past 3 years, I've been with the Division of Housing, and I primarily worked as a program specialist and as a grant manager for state-funded supportive housing programs. So namely the State Housing Voucher Program and the Tenancy Support Services Program. So I've gotten to work with some of you already. So in working with those programs, and especially in helping develop custom HMIS reports for TSS reporting, I've gotten to just see more and more the importance of consistent and effective HMIS utilization across the state. So when this opportunity came up, I was just really excited to transition over to this new role. And now I'm here. So if you've been on meetings with me already, you've noticed I'm definitely doing a lot more listening than talking, as I'm still catching up to all the knowledge and experience that Matt has on the HMIS side. But I'm excited to keep learning and to learn more about how our team can support all the great work that you all are doing. So I think I'll be kicking it off to Zach.
Hi, everyone. Zach Schaffner, he, him, his pronouns. I'm the Community Partnerships and Development Manager within the Office of Homeless Initiative. So I have a really exciting job in that I get to really focus on a lot of our community-focused work around our Built for Zero partnerships and working with local communities to implement best practices that make homelessness rare and brief. Part of that development capacity is really looking at projects where Division of Housing's other office, the Office of Housing Finance and Sustainability, that works in the affordable housing space, to really sort of bridge that gap between the creation of high quality supportive housing, looking at other interventions across the continuum, emergency shelter, those sort of instances where we have bricks and sticks construction coming together with other resources like tenancy support services, like project-based vouchers, things like that. And I will turn it over to Summer.
Good morning. My name is Summer Garcia. She, hers, sorry, apologies. And I get the privilege of being the Built for Zero community liaison. It's a new position with the Division of Housing. So I've been here for 2 months. And I will be and provide coaching, training, peer learning across Colorado, Built for Zero communities, and really facilitate the communication between the local communities and the state strategy design team.
Thanks, Summer. And so all of these spaces are folks that you all who are doing balance of state work either have engaged with or will engage with. And so we're excited, like we all said, to get to keep working with you. And we're going to just keep digging in and kick it off to Cassie, who will talk a little bit about the history of CoCs and the balance of state.
Yeah, thanks, Chels. So I'm going to guess that this information is very familiar to a lot of you. We have been doing this work for years and years at this point. Like Chelsea mentioned earlier, we are recording this session. We want to start to create sort of a consistent repertoire of information, onboarding documents, and experiences for folks who are coming into the balance of state work. So we're going to start with a little history lesson. Won't go too deep into this, but just want to make sure folks understand the context of CoCs, or continuums of care. So these groups, these structures were introduced in the late 90s when the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, changed the way that local communities can request money for these efforts from the federal government. So instead of receiving, hundreds and hundreds of applications from each individual 501c3 or local government, HUD created these geographically designed continuums of care so that regions and communities with similarities could work together on homelessness initiatives. So there's a lot of reasons why they made that change. There's a lot of pros, there's a lot of cons, obviously, but we've listed just a couple of them here, wanting to make sure that we're streamlining efforts, wanting to make sure that we're improving the ability for smaller, scrappier, newer nonprofits to compete for funds by connecting to this larger work, wanting to make sure that regions are doing the same thing, the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, et cetera, especially now that we see requirements like coordinated entry, that regional coordination is even more important. But then also we want to look at, making sure that we have a clear picture of the understanding, like Matt was saying. The data around coordinated entry, it is now something that people are using in a much more meaningful way to really understand what homelessness looks like in their region. And as we all know, homelessness doesn't just exist in one community, right? Folks move around, especially in places like Colorado, especially in places like the balance of state. People don't have a understanding of where the CoC lines are. They're going to go to where they can find resources. They're going to go to where they can find support. And so it just makes it even more instrumental that we are working together in order to support those folks. So all of these responsibilities are laid out in 24 CFR Part 578. If there's any policy nerds in the audience, that's where you can go to find all the regulations, all the expectations, And I do want to clarify one thing here. When we talk about COCs, we could be talking about these regional groups. We could also be talking about the CoC program funding, which is funds for very specific types of projects. So there's a couple of different ways that we use the term CoC as well. I think that's important to know. In this discussion, in this presentation, we're talking about the balance of state CoC. We're talking about the geographic designation of a continuum of care. And so Chelsea, you can go to the next slide. The balance of state CoC was established in 2000. It includes all 54 of Colorado's non-metro counties. And one thing to point out, we have a visual representation of this because it's much easier to see visually, but there are only 4 federally recognized CoCs in Colorado. So we have the balance of state, we have the NDHI CoC that Matt talked about, Metro Denver Homelessness Initiative. We have the Northern Colorado CoC, which is Weld and Larimer counties. And then we have the Pikes Peak CoC, which is the county of El Paso. Everything else, Chelsea, if you could go to the next slide, is the balance of state continuum of care. And so even though we have 10 sub-regions within the balance of state, which you can see are laid out in this map with the various colors sort of circling or encapsulating those regions, even though there are those 10 subregions, all of those subregions are part of the balance of state continuum of care. Each region has their own, local work that they're doing, their own local CoC infrastructure, but it's all part of that larger group. And so those are, it's harder to see on this map, like the names of those regions, but they do each have their own names, their own board members, their own representation, etc. And that is how it all works together for the balance of state. So to explain a little bit about the balance of state governance and key roles, we're going to kick it over to Dee Dee.
Thank you, Cassie. So I always think it's good to have refreshers, right? And Cassie just said a lot of information, and just kind of want to repeat some of what she said. So keep in mind that the state of Colorado only has 4 CoCs. We're part of the balance of state, which means that we represent those 54 counties. And so the other 3, as she said, was Denver Metro, Northern Colorado, and El Paso. And so everyone else makes up the balance of state. Currently, our board membership, we have about 21 members, and these members are individuals that receive CoC funding and individuals that don't receive funding, also just other key stakeholders. Sometimes in our governing board meetings, we refer to those key stakeholders as members at large or at-large members. And so examples of what an at-large member would be like Volunteers of America, Rocky Mountain Human Services, the Rural Homeless Youth. We have Youth with Lived Experience. Those are just, and the Veteran Affair folks. And so those are some examples of what the members at large would be. But the rest of the folks on the governing board are actually representatives from the 10 regions. So those 54 counties are divided into 10 separate regions. Each region is able to have 2 board members serving on the governing board. And so the region selects those board members. That's how they get nominated, if you will, to come to the board. And currently we have about 5 regions that don't have 2 members. Fortunately, all of our regions have at least 1 board member, but I know that we're missing a couple from a couple of our regions. The other thing that is good to know about the governing board is that we are not, as Cassie mentioned, we started in 2000, and we started as a result because the federal government said, hey, you need to have a continuum of care. And so that's kind of how it got created. The governing board, though, is not a legal entity. So we can't make laws and then force the counties to adhere to those laws, right? That's not what we do. But what we do is that we are a decisioning board. And so what that means is that collaboratively, we work together on coordinated entry, and we come with processes, and we discuss about like, what does coordinated entry look across for the balance of state? That's just an example of one of the things that we have done. But it's important to know that it's all of these governing boards have a voice in the decision and the direction of where we're going with the balance of state. Part of our charge, though, is that we have to identify an HMIS lead and a collaborative applicant. And in 2022, the governing board decided that they wanted to do a competitive request for proposal, so RFP. And so we submitted an RFP and we received applications. And then the board reviewed the applications and they did intensive interviews. And then ultimately, the Division of Housing was recommended, and then the Balance of State Board voted on that and then approved for the Division of Housing to be our collaborative applicant and our HMIS lead. And we're excited to have them on board. Prior to that, it was the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, and we had been partners with them for over 20 years. And when I think about the foundational work that the Colorado Coalition has done to help us become the balance of state that we are today, I'm grateful for their influence in our life. But as we were looking at the applications, and again, it was that competitive process, the decision was made to go with Division of Housing. And to really dive deep into what is a collaborative applicant and HMIS, I know that there are some slides coming up after me, and they're really going to talk a lot more about that. So I'll just say next slide.
Thanks, Dee Dee. All right, so like Dee Dee said, the Division of Housing is what's called a collaborative applicant, and then we're also the HMIS lead. We throw these terms around a lot, but we don't always pause to actually talk about what they are, and so that is a goal of today. So every CoC in the country has a collaborative applicant. And like we've talked about, we have 4 CoCs in Colorado, and that means that we have 4 collaborative applicants in Colorado. And Division of Housing is the collaborative applicant for the Balance of State CoC. You all sometimes might hear the term lead agency. Sometimes folks will use the technical term collaborative applicant. Other times folks will use the term lead agency of the CoC, but they're usually talking about the same role. And like Dee Dee mentioned, it is a requirement of HUD. Every CoC has to have a collaborative applicant. That is the process and decision that happens of that CoC governing board. And then like Dee Dee said, the reason for that is that CoCs are not actually legal entities. CoCs are groups of organizations and community members who have come together for the shared vision of ending homelessness, but they don't have legal status. And so the reason of selecting a collaborative applicant who is a legal entity is so that there is an entity that can do a lot of really critical functions on behalf of the CoC. So for example, the collaborative applicant is responsible for registering the CoC with the federal government. The collaborative applicant also serves or acts as the CoC during HUD's annual funding processes. And then the collaborative applicant is also the only eligible entity that can actually apply for and receive planning funds for the CoC to use to plan and advance their different goals. And then a couple of other key functions of the collaborative applicant or the lead agency is working really closely with the governing board and then also community members on the governance charter. Every CoC has to have what's called a charter, which defines different roles and responsibilities and processes. And then depending on the CoC, collaborative applicants will also take on a couple of other additional responsibilities. And in the case of the Balance of State, the collaborative applicant is responsible for facilitating the point in time count, establishing different policies and procedures and maintaining records, and then ultimately, engaging with different partners and members, which is why we are having this webinar today. So if some of you all are visual, this is an attempt to give kind of a visual depiction of how the collaborative applicant engages, particularly with the governing board and with different committees. And ultimately, what the collaborative applicant is charged with doing is exchanging different information, right? So the governing board will assign duties to the collaborative applicant. They will give ideas and expertise, just as the collaborative applicant will do for them. And then same thing with the committees. The committees and the collaborative applicant are really working closely together to support each other and ultimately advance these goals of the broader CoC membership. And then I do just want to give a quick flag that for the collaborative applicant staff at for the balance of state. So Cassie and I had introduced ourselves earlier, saying that we're doing a lot of the balance of state transition work as contractors, but we are hiring 2 full-time positions who will primarily focus on those collaborative applicant functions. So we did have 1 position that just closed on Monday, and then we have 1 other position which was extended actually through tomorrow. So this position will work on so many great things with balance of state. But if you're interested in that position, or if you know anyone who's interested in working for the balance of state, know that that position closes tomorrow. And we hope, we're excited to get some applications for that. And I'm going to kick it over to Matt and Carla to talk about what it means to be an HMIS lead.
Awesome. Thanks, Chelsea. Sorry, and it's all acronyms all the time, right? So HMIS, Homeless Management Information System. Just like with our collaborative applicant, every CoC has an HMIS lead. So in Colorado, we have 4 HMIS leads. Just like collaborative applicants, HMIS leads are required by HUD and designated by the governing board. And our HMIS lead team works with a collaborative entity known as the statewide Co-HMIS Collaborative, really to ensure we all have standardized policies and procedures in place for our system. And also we work together to advance important initiatives that impact all of the continuums of care in our CoC. We also work closely with our HMIS software vendor BitFocus to ensure that our system is compliant with all of HUD's HMIS data and technical standards in our system too. So really at an even higher level, HMIS leads are the data stewards who manage or oversee the continuum selected HMIS software. And that entails system configuration. We configure workflows and settings within our system for agencies and the projects that they operate and collect data for to ensure they're able to meet their reporting requirements and really demonstrate the important work they are doing each and every day. And in recent years, this also entails configuring our system for coordinated entry initiatives. Coordinated entry is not a separate thing from HMIS. It's actually a very integral component of HMIS. Training is another important area that we oversee. We provide each new end user with an introductory course for HMIS that's self-paced on our learning management system. I actually see a few folks in the meeting today who have recently gone through that training. It's nice to put some names to faces. And we also have an annual refresher training for all active end users of our system every year, where we review any impending data standard updates or new fields that are being added, and best practices and core competencies that we want to reinforce with active end users as well. We're hoping to work with our HMIS lead partners around the state to collaborate and develop additional training components in our LMS by project type, by funding source. And we're hoping to have those out in the coming months. Customer service and technical support is really a very large component of being an HMIS lead. We have a ticketing system. I think the contact info for that is later in the slide deck. But we regularly field tickets from providers and end users who need assistance, really anything from clarifying expectations on workflows to reporting needs, whether those are federal or custom. We field those inquiries and provide resolution to the best of our ability. And then reporting is another kind of key pillar here, where we support federal and custom reporting needs for providers and for our CoC overall. You know, federal reporting like APRs and CAPRs and system performance measures. Those are things that we have to get in place for providers every year. But we also want to fulfill ad hoc custom reporting requests to help better support providers on grant proposals, or just creating operational dashboards too, to reflect here's what homeless service data across our entire continuum and our entire state really looks like. So those are really the key high level notes we wanted to flag today. I think we're ready to move on over to the next slide.
So I am going to talk to you all a little bit about Built for Zero and how we implement that in Colorado. So here's a little diagram really of the infrastructure that we have in Colorado. So we have the Built for Zero community solutions, which the staff provide coaching, training to the local or to the backbone institutions and local communities. And just Built for Zero is, we don't already know, it's like a methodology or a set of best practices that we've decided to implement into our Built for Zero, like our communities across Colorado. We use those best practices to make system improvements, ultimately. Next, we have the state backbone team, which is the state strategy design team, and that is made up of state agencies, CoC leads, funders, Division of Housing, VA, health agencies. This team consists of action teams that review strategy, progress, review goals regularly. And then we have the state backbone, which is the Division of Housing. So they are the backbone agency for state level work for the balance of state and also just local communities across Colorado. That is where my position lives. And then we have MDHI, which is the Metro Denver backbone, and they are providing support for communities in the Metro Denver area. And my position, like I had mentioned earlier, I had to work with everybody and provide coaching support, training, things like that, facilitating the peer learning opportunities across Colorado. So I'm sure many of you have gotten my many emails about cohort convenings, filling out all my surveys and things, because the next part of it, as I had mentioned, is making sure that the communication between that state backbone team and the communities, the communication is clear and we know what's going on with the communities, and then the local communities know what's going on at the state. Probably clear as mud. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, because I know that it can be a little confusing, like the difference between all of these different levels and where you should be involved. And if this is your first time hearing about Built for Zero and you're not sure how to get connected, you can always reach out and I will get you connected to who you need to in your community or someone from Community Solutions, and we'll figure it out. And just a little background. So in 2019, Colorado's was the first state level initiative in the nation. So that's pretty cool. I know there's a couple other states now that are following, but Colorado was the first one. And lost my train of thought for a second here. And some of the things that have already been accomplished because of this statewide initiative is the co-created vision and built-in, let's see, statewide model. So the development of the state homelessness playbook. If you haven't seen it or haven't read it, I put a little link in here. Go check it out. Improved statewide system structure. So that's formalizing the backbone institutions. So like I had mentioned, that's the Division of Housing, MDHI, and then the state design team. Strengthening data systems and quality. So aligning communities around the collection and use of real-time data. Little plug, HMIS. Let's see, and the dashboards, the we have a few dashboards. So there's the Built for Zero Colorado dashboard, which also a link here. I encourage you to go check it out. See what Colorado is doing, see their numbers, which has also informed the governor's dashboard. Another one, go check it out, see what's going on in the state. Let's see, accelerated deployment and improved efficiency and proven housing interventions. And then strengthen community capacity. So funding additional positions and coaching for system level coordination, data and performance management, street outreach. And then we've had some real reductions in homeless subpopulations. So in Denver Metro, they've had a 40% decrease in veteran homelessness since 2020. Fremont County, shout out to Dee Dee and Fremont. They've achieved functional zero for veterans in 2021, and they're set to reach functional zero for a few other subpopulations like chronic and youth. And then Pueblo County is on track also to reach functional zero for veterans very soon. So all very, very exciting things, and none of this would have been possible without the statewide approach. And again, if you have any questions, reach out. This will not be the last time you've heard from me.
Okay, so what we are hoping to have messaged at this point is, you know, Dee Dee mentioned that the Division of Housing as of September 1st has become the collaborative applicant for the balance of state. So within these sort of three buckets, we have the collaborative applicant sort of CoC responsibility, we have the HMIS lead responsibility, and we have this statewide capacity that Summer just talked about. And that really what we're hoping to be able to communicate, share with you all, are the goals and the vision and the infrastructure that DOH is bringing to the balance of state. We have said a lot. So before we move into what we're going to do with that infrastructure, how we're going to support that infrastructure, I will stop and see if there are any questions. I know talking on a webinar can be overwhelming or uncomfortable, so you can throw things in the chat if you want, but I'm going to intentionally stop just for a minute and just see if there are any questions, any comments, anything that seems confusing up to this point. Okay. All right. Well, we will have contact information at the end. Oh, here we go. So Becky is asking, how do we access Built for Zero tools? Summer, is it okay if I put you on the spot for that one?
What tool? Oh, tools. I believe, so Becky, you're in the region where Dee Dee, Fremont area, right? So we can make that connection. But also there's a whole website and you can definitely access the tools. The Built for Zero website. And there is a username and password specific to your community, which Dee Dee can share with you. I believe it's probably the same as what everybody else. And Zach has his hand up too. So Zach, jump in.
Yeah, just to add, right, we know that there, and hopefully that slide showed this, right? We have specific communities who are participating in Built for Zero. Those communities don't always align with the balance of state regions. And so we're very aware that, right, Fremont County has reached functional zero for veteran homelessness, but the larger Upper Arkansas region has not. And that's really based on, you know, the feedback that we've gotten from communities. Really difficult to scale the work of ending homelessness across multiple counties. That's one of the things the balance of state is really going to be focused on, is how do we make that jump from individual communities to full regions participating? And we want to sort of build out intentionally and sort of in communities like Chaffee County saying, all right, this is what Fremont County is doing. This is the approaches they've taken. How do we scale that out? But also we want to be sort of responsive to the fact that there are only a certain number of spots that exist for communities to participate in Built for Zero. So the long-term vision is that we would really like the balance of state continuum of care to participate in Built for Zero as a CoC rather than as individual communities. We really feel, and I feel like it was the right approach to start with individual communities, just so communities could really get their hands in that work, build those local systems. But we are scaling towards that CoC level participation. It's in the future, but those are the kind of tools we want to provide access to. It's that technical assistance, it's making those connections, but also saying, okay, this is what's worked in your neighboring community in Fremont. How do we scale out from here? And then also, are there dedicated funds available through Community Solutions and Built for Zero that we can help connect you with?
I'm going to put my
Thanks, Zach.
contact
Thanks, Zach.
information too in the chat.
And then Becky had the other comment of that they're doing case conferencing, brand new to HMIS. I think, Matt, I'll do a shameless plug for you. Anyone who puts a question into the HMIS help desk, I don't know, Matt, if you don't mind throwing that into the chat as well. That's the best way to send over any HMIS related questions. And yeah, as Matt mentioned, he and Carla are more than happy to help talk about workflow or anything like that, I suppose. Thank you, Matt. Go ahead. Oh, Matt, did you come off mute to say something, or did you?
I did, but then you said to put it in the chat, and that works just fine too. So did all that.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, and then Denise had a question. What are the homeless populations that have gone through Built for Zero in Balance of State in Colorado? Zach and Summer, back to you.
Yeah, so populations don't go through Built for Zero just to individual communities set goals around which populations they're going to reach quality data for, and then reach a functional zero designation for. There are some really exciting conversations that Community Solutions is starting around, homeless or zero for all, I think is the terminology, right, Dee Dee, that they've used. The goal is to scale across, but really we are starting with veterans and individuals experiencing chronic homelessness. That's in response to the resources that are available. Talked about things like SSVF, HUD-BASH, the CoC-PSH program, other resources targeted to those populations. But we are starting to see other communities, and we've really set some goals around reaching functional zero for other populations and also reaching quality data for populations like young adults, for families, and scaling out to that homeless for all. So individual communities are setting those population preferences, but the ultimate goal is we want to scale, right? The idea is reach functional zero, show that this approach works. We've done that, and then build out from there.
And one thing that I want to add, and Cassie, I know you're going to talk about this in a minute, the survey that we have, but part of what DOH's role is in these new positions is to work with partners and add capacity and support to figure out which goals and strategies we as a CoC want to pursue. And so even though, Zach and Summer had talked about Built for Zero, and there's a certain number of slots to formally participate in Built for Zero, that doesn't mean that there aren't other ways for all of us to come together and work on different strategies that we know work. And so one of the things that DOH as the collaborative applicant and the HMIS lead will be doing with the community partnerships team and also with other teams, both at the state and throughout the balance of state, is really trying to refine what's the work that y'all are already doing that we can help support, and what is some new work that we can help support. So yes, Built for Zero, it's a great initiative, and many balance of state communities are participating in it. And if you're not in one of those slots, that doesn't mean that we can't still try to mirror some of those models in collaboration as well. What other
Great questions. Great. Oh, go ahead, Chelsea.
No, please, Cassie, go.
I'm sure you're about to say the same thing. Anything else? Any other questions? Anything else that's sitting on people's minds before we sort of move into this next phase of the presentation, which is our vision for bringing this support to the balance of state? Okay. All right. Well, we are going to move into more discussion. So one thing, we as DOH staff have talked about the support, the planning, the sort of infrastructure and buildup that we have been doing over the last 2 months as the official lead. But we know it's essential, especially in communities as diverse as the balanced state communities. It's essential for us to have an understanding of felt need, of needs of folks who are, boots on the ground doing this work every day. So we have been sending a lot of requests for information and polls and things like that. And we are going to do some more with you all here now. So shameless.
Cassie, we lost you.
So can you hear me? Because I've muted my, okay, there we go. Can you hear me now? Sorry. I hit enter and somehow it muted me. Cool. So I just shamelessly, we have extended our poll deadline. So I put the link for the survey in the chat. This survey is really just asking, what are the priorities that you all have as balanced state community members that we start to focus on? There, as we have been talking about, this work covers a huge breadth of responsibilities, different regulations, different expectations. And so to be intentional about how we approach this work, we really want our priorities to match your priorities. So if you have thoughts, if you have things you want to make sure you flag for us, please feel free to go in and complete the survey. Share it with as many folks as you want in your community. The more information here, the better. And yeah, we're going to move into sort of a live poll section. Chelsea, anything to add before we jump to the live poll? Okay, great. But if you could go to the next slide, we're going to start with sort of an easy quote unquote poll. Frankly, neither Chelsea nor I have ever done polls in Google Meet before. So shameless plug, if technology goes wrong, we apologize. We're going to start just to get an understanding of how long have folks been involved with the balance of state. So I'm going to launch a poll. You all should see it. Chelsea, if I could get a thumbs up if that's come through. Or maybe someone else, because now I'm realizing Chelsea's also a host.
I can see it. It is. Oh, Matt, you can see it too? Okay, good.
Yep. Cool. So we'll leave this open for a minute as folks can submit those polls. We'll close that here in just a second. As we move into these other three questions, what are the balance of state's biggest strengths? What are the balance of state's biggest pain points? And what is the biggest area for opportunity? These polls, the answers for these questions are all the same. So we're going to ask, asking about the same sorts of topics. We're going to ask you to look at them from these different lenses: our biggest strength, our biggest pain point, and the biggest area for opportunity. So we've got a couple of votes in the poll now. I'm going to end the poll. And then I'll show the result. Here we go. I think you all should be able to see the results now. So that's kind of what it's going to look like when we do these questions. We're going to leave them open just for a little bit longer. We'll sit in some silence for a moment. If we could only be watching someone make, I think it was muffins, Dee said that someone was making in a meeting she was on. So starting with, what is the balance of state's biggest strength? We've got coordinated entry, partnerships and collaboration, point in time, housing inventory, or youth supplemental surveys. So those counts that we have to do every year. HMIS, equity focused analyses, including those with lived experience. Built for Zero, balanced state resources, balance of state training, and or our youth services. There is an option for other. And I don't know if I'll be able to see who voted what, but if you do select other, it would be great if you could put that in the chat or in, if you want to come off mute and like share what that is. So we'll leave this open for just a bit. I've got about 7 votes now. Okay. More votes coming in. It's looking like, well, I'll share the results when they're done. It's looking like partnership and collaboration so far coming through as our strength. We've got about 27 people on the call, so I'm going to leave this open until at least 12 of us have voted. So if you haven't voted, please do so. Okay. All right. We've got about half of the votes. I'm going to go ahead and end this one. If you have a last minute vote, please feel free to put that in. We should have the Jeopardy theme song, Chelsea, for our music here.
I know.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh. We let down this group today, but we'll do better next time.
Okay, and Jana, thanks for your comment about refraining from voting for being new. That is totally acceptable. All right, so it looks like you all should be able to see these results. We had 6 votes for partnerships and collaboration as our biggest strength. A few votes for coordinated entry, a few for HMIS, and a few for point-in-time housing inventory count. Oh, county, that says county. I'm so sorry. That's a typo. That's my fault. And youth supplemental survey. Anyone who voted for participation, or I'm sorry, partnerships and collaboration, anything that's standing out that you want to share or talk about or give as a reason for why you voted for that one? I'm going to sit here in silence for a moment. County to count. Oh, go ahead,
jump
Denise.
in. I'll just say, and everyone knows I represent kind of the youth provider experience, but YHDP, so the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, I really think has shown a lot of collaboration and partnership over many years trying to get this grant. And now we have it, and watching all the regional coalitions, you know, coming together around it. And I think it really exemplifies. We may not have all the capacity and resources that we need, but we make the most of what we have.
Thanks, Denise. And I'm curious, is anyone picked coordinated entry? That was the second strength. Were there any comments on that? Really, anybody who picked anything, feel free to share. I'm just picking on the answers who had the most responses. Caitlin said in the chat, we're very new to this, but it seems like a great opportunity to connect with other like-minded organizations in our area and make sure we're not duplicating efforts or unnecessarily competing for resources. Yeah, that's the exact kind of nail on the head definition of why we created, or why HUD created COCs in the first place. So, any other thoughts on the biggest strength? Any other comments before we jump to the pain points?
I just want to say, like, I selected coordinated entry just because I feel like in our region, it's also an opportunity just to sort of work together with our service providers that are serving the homeless, but also we have conversations about partnerships and collaboration there as well. So I just feel like that's a great strength in our community.
Yeah. Thanks, Evelyn. Yeah, I feel like both kind of go hand in hand, partnerships and collaboration and coordinated entry. And for folks, I'm realizing now we have a lot of newer folks on the line. If you're unsure of what coordinated entry is, apologies that we haven't defined that yet. Coordinated entry is a requirement from HUD that states that communities and agencies and GSEs have to be working together to create what's called a by name list. So a list of folks in their communities experiencing homelessness. Those by name lists are organized by an assessment that creates sort of like a vulnerability score for people. And those vulnerability scores are how we dictate who gets access to resources, which resources are connected to which population of folks, and you align housing resources and housing support with the level of need. So go ahead, Zach.
Well, and I'll just add the Built for Zero layer, right, is that what we see is that coordinated entry systems are an essential part of your homeless response system. And with Built for Zero, we're really ensuring that that system is focused on making homelessness rare and brief. Like that kind of coordination, Evelyn, what you described, the fantastic work happening in Durango and in the Southwest is really saying, okay, we're going to have conversations and really use that quality data to look at inflow, active, outflow. And that coordinated entry system is really the engine that's driving a lot of those housing placements, a lot of those conversations about what are we doing to ensure that everyone has a safe, stable place to call home. So I think it's become more in Colorado than just a HUD requirement. It's really become how we want to see communities partnering, because we know that when they take that approach, and based on the experiences in places like Fremont, that it really does help them move the dial.
Thanks, Zach. Any other thoughts before we jump over to pain points? All right, I'll go ahead and launch the next poll. So same responses, same categories. If you click coordinated entry as a strength, you can still click coordinated entry as a pain point, vice versa, right? So go ahead and throw in areas that can be pain points. I think as folks are thinking about this, right, DOH is very new to this work, so please feel free to be honest, no hurt feelings, no, frustrations or anything. We really want to understand what the pain points are for you all so that we can start to build that capacity internally. Yeah. So far, no votes in the other category. So that's an thing. Got about 4 votes now. Okay. Awesome. We're up to about 9. I'll give it a few more minutes. See if we can get about 12 so we can get some about half of the folks represented. Okay, we do have one other vote. So the person who selected other, please feel free to share what that is when we open this for discussion. Okay. All right, we're up to about 10. So anyone votes, please throw those in now. Going once, going twice. All right. All right, here we go. So we'll show everyone the results. So it looks like equity-focused analysis, including lived experience, has been was the highest vote. So for folks who selected this, I'm curious what about this feels like a pain point? To frame that another question, how could, let's say we wave our magic wand, DOH fixes this problem overnight. What does that look like for your community?
I can share something, but it's really not so much it just feels like a little bit of a pain point because there's been it's more recent that it's on our radar. It should have been on our radar before, but I think just looking forward to opportunities where there's more guidance and maybe some tools that look at the climate of organizations or so not really a pain point yet, just an opportunity.
Thanks, Evelyn. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I think this. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm
Matt,
sorry,
go.
Cassie. I'm just wondering, like, the lived experience piece for sure. Hear that. I think I wonder how much of this pain point on the equity focus analysis is just we're not really right now for the balance of state digging into the details in our system that are being collected, right? And that's definitely a big. It's an area that we want to lean into pretty heavily in the coming year after we kind of shore up our infrastructure, button up some disconnects we've noticed with system configuration settings, reinforce like the core competencies and training needs for HMIS. We have a lot of opportunity to make HMIS not this black hole where data just gets entered and never gets looked at or analyzed in meaningful ways. So I think on my end, that's the main pain point that I see for this one is we have a lot of this information in our system being captured day after day after day. We just haven't, in the ways that we need to, in the ways that I hope that we will, get this information in front of folks, in front of decision makers, in front of providers, and show you this story of what this information is telling us across each region and our entire continuum. Just to plug that out there too.
Thanks, Matt. I think, and Chelsea, I think you can speak to this too. I think one area, and this was my selection, candidly, for the big pain points for the balance of state. I think, Chelsea, you mentioned this, but a lot of funders are starting to ask this question. And so, Matt, to your point, because we haven't started to really dig in and do that analysis, it can be a pain point in terms of the collaborative applicant's capacity to leverage those funds for the balance of state.
Totally. I think this is a big area of opportunity for our team and for our entire continuum as we get into 2024. And I'm really optimistic about what we'll be able to put out there and solicit feedback about too.
Yeah. Cool. And then Caitlin, thank you for putting into the chat the other. So the other that Caitlin shared was getting local organizations on board. We only found out about this the homeless tax credit application, and it would be great to see a coordinated effort to get more of our local peers involved. I think that's a great flag, Caitlin. One conversation we are having every time we meet with our groups and our committees is how do we pitch the balance of state? What is that value add? How does this not just become another meeting, but meaningful engagement for folks with plenty to do and full-time jobs. Awesome. Okay, any other thoughts or comments? It looks like resources, that's always a challenge, right? I guess I should say a lack of resources, but it looks like there were a few other votes across the board, point in time, HMIS, Bill for Zero, training, that all got one vote. So sort of pretty expected dispersed pain points. Any specific things folks want to jump to? Oh, go ahead, Becky.
Thanks. I wanted to say, well, first of all, so much gratitude to Dee Dee and her team, Jennifer in particular on her team, for training us. Jennifer is really my mentor in all things balance of state and even HMIS for that matter. We've really only been collecting data for a little over a year, but still in our county, in Chaffee County, we have the myth that there are no homeless people here. They just come up in the camp for the summer and then go back home, especially in Buena Vista. And so by creating our local CoC and developing those partnerships, it was really about me pounding the sidewalk to meet with the other partners in our community, from DHS to the homeless shelter, which is only 3 years old. They just opened for their 4th year last on the 1st. To Solvista, to all the organizations that actually interact with folks who are unhoused on the daily. And but we're inventing the wheel at the same time as other small communities are inventing the wheel. And so sharing like our story about how we're building this, and then having, and I was one of the ones who voted for resources, because without you guys throwing this out there over and over through many different avenues, we would not we wouldn't be able to be like, oh, there's something that might help us in this work on the ground. And so thank you for throwing all these resources out in all the different ways, because you never know what's going to stick or what we'll even be able to look up and catch.
Yeah, totally. Becky, thank you for sharing that. That reminds me, like, again, the kind of the value of having this centralized database for care coordination and data analysis, which HMIS is for providers who enter information in from around the state. All CoCs contribute, right? When I was at Metro Denver, we continued to hear like from folks who were saying people move to Colorado to experience homelessness, right? People that are housed here don't. It's more people moving in from out of state, right? So we did an analysis on optional data collection elements in our system. It's in our it's in our intake paperwork. Where were you last permanently housed? When we're meeting with you at intake, would you share that information with us, right? We did an analysis on it. We looked at it, and for the I think there were like 12,000 values we had of last permanent residences for folks. Overwhelmingly, like 85+%, maybe even higher in certain CoCs, people were last permanently housed in Colorado, not outside of our state. So I know that HMIS has a lot of data entry requirements to meet for funding, for all those things. There are optional data collection elements that do allow us to, in data-driven ways, push back on these harmful narratives that we all are aware of, we all hear. And when we have the data, we can represent and tell the story of what the folks we serve are telling us when they come in, right? Like moving from anecdotal to data-driven is a really powerful thing. And we've been able to help frame that up using HMIS data for what that's worth, just since we're all here talking.
One thing I want to plug to, not from the balance of state perspective, but from the Division of Housing perspective for you all to be aware of, is that the state of Colorado is beginning the statewide homelessness analysis, where they'll be connecting with providers, connecting with CoCs, connecting with local governments to try to paint or show the most accurate picture about the state of homelessness in Colorado as possible. And so it will be really important. We're working with a consultant on that. Their name is APT, but we at the Office of Homeless Initiatives are facilitating that. And so at some point we will be connecting APT to folks throughout the balance of state to make sure that all of your voices are represented in that analysis. And I think, Becky, one thing that we as a CoC can do is all come together and say, okay, we've got this analysis or we have this data now combined with the ongoing data that Matt and Carla have been working on with folks. How do we want to use it? What do we want to kind of take out of it? And how can we be armed with this accurate information, like Matt said, so we can strategically try to combat some of those inaccurate messages.
Awesome. This is a great conversation, and I think a good example of ways that these categories aren't siloed, right? These are all very overlapping categories. And I think, again, part of the reason why we wanted to start with what DOH is hoping to bring is so that we can have these conversations and it's not just sort of, oh man, what a frustrating thing, but how are we going to improve this and what are the concrete tasks that we're going to do in order to move these goals forward. So with that as a transition, unless there are any other thoughts on pain points, we'll move to the next poll question, which is, what is the balance of state's biggest opportunity, biggest area of opportunity? And I think for just sort of thought for folks as they're going through this, if you all could be thinking about, again, wave that magic wand, DOH fixes your problem tomorrow, what is that? What area would you like to see us to focus on? If you selected one of these as a pain point and or as a strength, please feel free to pick it again. And I will put in a plug in this format. We are making you select one option in the survey that is linked in the chat. There's the opportunity to select a few options. There are more options as well. So we're just seeing if we get different information, different priorities, making you pick one option or allowing you to pick multiple options. So again, shameless plug, please go do that survey. Please send it to folks, new folks who are folks new to the Balance of State or who've been working with Balance of State for years. Please feel free to share that along. Okay, these are some interesting results. We've got about 8 votes in. So if we could get just a few more and then we'll close it. Evelyn's like, I'm picking 2. Okay. Okay. Cool. So, great. We got about 10 votes plus a few back. All right. I will go ahead and close this one now, and we will show the result. All right. So interesting. Some of our strengths are seen as areas for opportunity. So, Evelyn, not to put you on the spot, do you want to speak a little bit about coordinated entry and HMIS, and then we'll jump into the partnerships and coordinated entry.
For us again, and we are so grateful that Matt is working alongside us. We appreciate him so much, and we look forward to where we're going with this. But I just think, right, we're still trying to align things and figure things out to make coordinated entry more robust. And, questions come up. How do we make sure we're reaching everybody that we should be reaching? So I think the two go hand in hand. But I also think that there's an opportunity. I think about how do we painlessly engage with some of our other providers that may not use HMIS, but can be part of coordinated entry, so that we can capture better, just get better engagement and participation in sort of our overall goal of what we want to accomplish through coordinated entry. So I just feel like the two, in my mind, just go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Dee.
I just wanted to piggyback off of what Evelyn said. If our desire truly is to end homelessness in the state of Colorado, I don't know how you can do that without having a coordinated entry, a robust coordinated entry program. And obviously coordinated entry has to include HMIS. And so the two just go together. But yeah, so I agree with Evelyn that while I think we've done a lot of work in coordinated entry and communities are buying into the by name list and doing case conferencing, there's more work to be done. So I'm just excited about where this could go in the future. So.
Yeah, for sure. Echo all those things. I appreciate the kindness, Evelyn. It's been great to get connected to you and your team and the providers in your region. I know that we have had some kind of one-off conversations initially about, can we just have some conversations with folks initially, right? Can we meet them where they are? If that means they don't want to do HMIS data entry, there are ways we can fold them into the processes with paperwork training, right? I think we have a real opportunity with Division of Housing at the table in these new capacities to support folks in ways that previously maybe the capacities didn't exist, right? So can we connect with these folks? They can get my contact information, they can get our ticketing system contact information, whatever we can do to support and get people connected to coordinate on getting folks in need plugged into coordinated entry processes. I feel pretty confident in saying this unilaterally across the board for our team. We're here to support whatever that needs to look like in each of our regions for these providers who don't currently participate. So feel free to share my information. I'm happy to coordinate meetings with those folks directly. So
awesome. All right. Any other thoughts, comments, discussion points for our biggest areas of opportunity? We've really hit on the main answers from this poll, but anything else you want to jump to as sort of a closeout thought on our discussion in live poll section? Yeah, Jennifer in the chat says it's the trick is making it as painless as possible. Matt has a phrase that he really likes to use a lot. I'll let him say it because it's simple, but I'm gonna mess it up.
I was about to type it out. Yeah, it's really just a phrase that's resonated with me, and it's things should be as simple as possible and no simpler, right? Like what inputs do we need to be able to collect about folks? Like the minimum amount of information to be able to prioritize them for available and limited resources, right? How do we button up these lengthy assessments that we use right now long term to be more targeted and get at the underlying information or data collection points that we have to know in order to do those things? And those should be co-designed with collaborative input from providers and with people with lived experience at the table too. And that's a long term. It's not something we can flip the switch on overnight and just put something in place. It'll take a lot of effort, a lot of collaboration, but our team is committed to doing those things with y'all and with the folks we're here to serve. So as simple as possible and no simpler is the long and short of it. I know it's very verbose in how I framed it.
Cool. All right, so we've got about 10 minutes left. I think thank you all for that discussion. That's great. That really helps us identify our priorities. Again, shameless plug, please also conduct or complete the survey that's linked previously in the chat if you haven't already. This is going to be really, really helpful for us and for our new staff as we hire them and onboard them. So we got about 10 minutes left. Any other last minute thoughts, comments before we jump over to what's next? Okay. All right, Kelsey, I think back to you.
Sure. Thanks, Cassie. And I echo what Cassie said. Thank you all for this discussion. A lot of the conversation today, and then also what we hope to get back through that survey is going to inform a lot of what is ahead, but we at least want to give kind of a glimpse into what we as the collaborative applicant and HMIS lead alongside the Balance of State board and members are going to focus on the next few months. So like I said earlier, we do have one Balance of State CoC position that is still open. It closes tomorrow, so please spread the word if you can do that within 24 hours. One thing that we've been working on and will continue to work on is preparing this annual calendar of different key events or benchmarks. That's something that we have a template for, based on some key deadlines that happen every year or typical workflows, but we've heard from folks that it would be really helpful if everybody had this shared document or resource that lays out, what we want to prioritize or focus on throughout the year. So we'll be working on that. We also obviously have the point in time count coming up in January, so you all will get some communications about that as well. We're doing some work with the HMIS intake forms and making sure documentation is updated. Denise had mentioned YHDP, the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, earlier, and that will be a funding opportunity for organizations that that work with young folks. So there will be an application coming out for that. Matt will continue with Carla doing this audit of existing HMIS configurations. And then we also have a webinar that is happening on December 1st, if folks are interested, where we'll talk really high level about CoC 101 funding. So when we talk about CoC funding, what does that mean? How does it work? So that's what is coming up. And then plug again for the survey. We'll use that information to inform a lot of our other next steps. And with that, we've got our contact info. Please reach out to us if you all have questions or comments. We're excited to work with you and really just appreciate the work that y'all are doing and the discussion that we had today. So we'll stay on for a few minutes if people have more questions or comments, and otherwise enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks everyone for joining. We'll post this, just FYI, on the website. So if you have, you want to come back to it, or if you have new folks you're bringing into this, that as well.
Great.
I'm going to stop recording now. And like I said, we'll hang out for a couple more minutes.